Next month, we meet on the third Thursday. I'm going to introduce Tory Cox, who's one of our board members, and a Long Beach Unified School social worker who's going to introduce our speakers this morning. Please, please, please put your phones on silent. Thank you.
I always appreciate that message because I can put mine on silent too. I'm Tory Cox. I do work for the Long Beach Unified School District as a school social worker, and I'm privileged to introduce our panel today. We have what we believe is a far-ranging scope of resources and services to talk to you about today, as well as some of the effects that homelessness has on children in our society. So what I'd like to do is introduce our speakers in reverse order and then have our first speaker come up. Elsa Ramos is the coordinator for the Multi-Service Center, which is our City of Long Beach one-stop resource center for those who are homeless, children and families. LeAnn Mora is our social worker for Long Beach Unified School District, who works at the Bethune Transitional Center, our district transitional center. And then Dora Jacildo is the executive director of Children Today. It's a program that provides daycare services for children up to age 6, and she has an excellent presentation to start us off with. So let's give a big round of applause for Dora.
Good morning. Again, my name is Dora Jacildo. I'm the Executive Director of Children Today, and Children Today provides daycare and family support services for children and families experiencing homelessness 0 to 6 years of age. But a couple of years ago, I came across this message that an 11-year-old child who was experiencing homelessness accidentally was sharing, and it was recorded by a researcher. And I want to share this with you because coming into the industry and working with children experiencing homelessness, my background is in human development and social change, and not in homeless provision, and certainly not really understanding the effects of homelessness on young children. But it was only until I came across the words of this 11-year-old child who was residing in a shelter that I really understood that I knew nothing. So I want to share those words with you because I think that it really grounds our work and it grounds our understanding of what it is to be a child experiencing this level of stress and trauma and loss. So this is an 11-year-old child residing in a shelter in Seattle. You think you know what homeless mean, but you don't know nothing about homeless. You think homeless mean you ain't got no apartment, you ain't got no bed for yourself, ain't got no place to wash off when you soil, you be sweaty. Well, being homeless mean more than all that. It mean you don't got no next door neighbor, no best friend no more. You don't got a favorite place to play or hide your candy money. You don't even got your own seat in your own classroom. You've been moving so many times. Don't know the teacher name, so who cares? She don't know your name either. You ain't got no good memories of holidays or the movies or even rides. You ain't even got yourself bad memories. You know why? You bet you don't. Because one shelter looked like the next, and soon you can't remember how long you've been in this one or that one anymore. Anyways, it don't make no difference. Not after a while, it don't. You know why? Because you be doubling up so many nights in the same bed covers, sharing the same potty so many nights that one morning you wake up and you ain't sure who you is anymore. Maybe you still you. Maybe you turn into the other person. So don't tell me you knows about homeless kids. And don't ask me if I understand what's happening to my family being that we got no home. They invisible, and so is me. I'm not here anymore. I died 3 years ago. Hey, you wasting your time talking to a dead person. So when I began to think about the work that we do and how this child basically felt invisible and dead and that her experience was irrelevant, I began to think about the work that we do at Children Today with young children, and most importantly with parents of young children, especially because we know that young children experiencing homelessness experiences and ability to cope is directly tied to the parents, the primary caregiver's ability to cope with their homelessness. So one of the things that we do at Children Today is we look at where children are developmentally, and we tie where children's typical development should be to the effects of homelessness and begin to individualize a plan that addresses their need to be typically developing and counters the effects of homelessness. And so our effort is really to begin looking at the effects of homelessness prenatally and move down towards kind of addressing the developmental needs, the social and emotional well-being of children in our programs, and then, you know, again, kind of developing individualized plans for children to address these areas of development as well as the parents' ability to care for children. So I wanted to begin by talking a little bit about some of the statistics that I came across in doing research with young children and as well as with teenagers. And one of the things that was alarming to me is that typically families experiencing homelessness are headed by single mothers, and 35% of homeless women coming into shelters are pregnant. And that's compared to 6% of the general population. So there is a huge number of women who are homeless, who are pregnant, who are lacking some of the basic needs that we see as vital in order to have a healthy child, and that is, of course, that 40% of providers were reporting that, providers were reporting that 40% of women coming into the shelters had experienced or were experiencing substance dependence or substance abuse. And so one of the things that we look at with children coming into our program is whether there was incidents of prenatal exposure. The other thing that we know about kind of pregnancy and women experiencing homelessness is that less than 50%, actually a little less than 50% of them sought out prenatal care. So many of the women going into shelters who were pregnant never seen a doctor before, and that again increases the likelihood that children will be born with some type of special need. The third part of this is that obviously women who are experiencing homelessness and are on the streets are not receiving health care in general and do have acute or sometimes chronic illnesses. Once a child is born, our greatest concern is obviously that the child has the ability to attach and bond to the mother. We know that the first stages of development all revolve around their ability to attach. And so if a child is stressed out, if a child is exposed to environmental factors, issues of sanitation, and certainly if they do not have the ability to see a doctor and be immunized, that increases a child's likelihood not only to develop health issues, but to develop a negative attachment. When the child is placed in our program, that's one of the first things that we address. We make sure that the child is connected to a primary caregiver who can be available for them and to them all day long and be responsive to them so that they can begin to attach to someone who is consistent if the parent at that point is unable to provide that for the child. By the time a child is 2 years old, that's when we typically can see actual signs of developmental delay. And our experience has been that the developmental delay occurs in two areas. One is in the area of speech and language development, and the other is in what you consider physical development as it relates to using the restroom, using the bathroom, going to the potty, baby, or childcare words. At that age, at the age a typical child would be developing autonomy, a sense of self, a sense of I can do this. And what we experience is that children actually regress. And so being in a program that can understand a child's development, understand the effects of homelessness on a child, that program can begin to do some initial screenings and some service coordination to help the child with the speech delay and other developmental delays. By preschool age, a child who is experiencing homelessness not only has exhibited some developmental delays. We know that 75% of preschool age children who are homeless have at least one developmental delay. 44% of them have 2 or more developmental delays, and 38% exhibit emotional and behavioral problems that require intervention. And so again, going back to understanding where children typically are, in the preschool age, children are all about initiative, about beginning to figure out who they are, about influencing their environment. And if a child is exhibiting delays, developmental delays, and if a child is stressed and emotionally overwhelmed, their ability to develop that aspect of their ego and of their identity, that initiative piece, that kind of figuring out the environment, influencing the environment, becomes unavailable. one of the things that we do see in the program oftentimes is that children are what I would consider flooded. They're highly emotional. They cry quite a bit. They become overwhelmed by things that seem very trivial. I remember one of my first experiences working with young children experiencing homelessness is watching a 3-year-old literally fall apart because he couldn't get his shoes on. And there was no way of consoling him. And so now that I understand how overwhelmed and how emotional little things become huge things for them because they've already come in so overwhelmed by all the circumstances that they carry. I often tell my staff when a child at 8 o'clock has a meltdown, I wonder how many battles he's already lost this morning. We know, again, that a child's well-being, a child's coping ability, a child's resiliency, if you will, during the early years are tied to their mother's ability to cope with their circumstances. And knowing this, our number one concern working with young children is to empower mama, to make mama, and I say mama because what we typically see is single mothers as the heads of household. Our goal, as soon as a parent walks into the facility, is to make mom the primary caregiver who can influence the experience her child is having. And even if mom comes in with a lot of stress, clearly overwhelmed, that is our goal. We understand that children are with us for a limited of time and they will be with their parents hopefully for many, many years to come. And so you can never separate one from the other in our perspective. The ability to empower mom, to make mom powerful, is directly tied to the experience the child is having. Oftentimes, we see parents come in and share with us how disempowered they feel, how absolutely out of control they feel because of their circumstances. And we realize the children are witnessing this happen to their parent. Children need to believe that parents will protect. Children need to believe that parents are there as their link to seeing the world as safe. And if a parent is feeling unsafe, or if the parent is being treated in a way that takes away their power, that child begins to believe that the parent doesn't have influence, that the parent cannot protect, and therefore the world is not safe. We have heard a number of times parents talk about how in receiving services they are asked to share their story over and over again in front of children. They are disciplined in front of their children. Parenting is public in front of their children. As a matter of fact, I had a 5-year-old once say to me, I want to buy my mom a house because I don't want her to get written up at the shelter anymore. And so I think about the exposure that children have to their parents as powerless and how frightening that is. And what it communicates to them is that they are not safe and they cannot be protected. So the goal of the program is to counter that by making sure that all of our interactions with parents communicate to the child that we respect your parent, that your parent is your primary caregiver, that we are creating the environment for your parent to be the person that knows most about how to care for you. And that translates from how you are provided your basic needs, what food we provide for you, how we engage you, what's in the environment that reminds you of home and of your parent, to again, ground, or actually create that foundation that the child will only be with us for months, perhaps a couple of years at most, but that they will be with this parent who needs to be empowered in order for the child to develop in a way that they feel safe in the world. So I really wanted to kind of emphasize that piece because we find that that is by far the most challenging thing for families experiencing homelessness, that everything about their experience is public. That when they live in shelters, they are publicly parenting. That when they're out on the street, they are in a public setting, and that there is no sense of privacy and therefore no sense of power. We have seen many women who've lived in poverty all their lives speak about the great loss, even though they've been poor, the great loss of not being able to do something as simple as provide a meal for their child, to cook their child's favorite meal. And the great loss that is attached to that, only is profounded by going into a situation where they feel that there is no ability to bring in a sense of their own culture or to contain their family's values and beliefs because they're either in communal living or because they have to abide by the many rules and restrictions of different case plans and different organizations that are providing support. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there because I think that while we cannot fix homelessness in a heartbeat, we cannot just develop housing and we cannot just provide adequate wages for people to be able to live independently. I think we can begin to look at how our interactions with children or how our interactions with parents affect children. What's in the environment that supports children? What is in the environment that empowers parents to be the best advocates and the best caregiver for their child? When children go into school age or into the school setting, things tend to shift a little. Their ability to cope with the situation is changed because their development changes. And while at the earlier ages, the goal of attaching appropriately, becoming autonomous, and taking initiative and kind of seeing what influence you have in the world shifts to your role as it relates to your peers, your role as it relates to what you look like, what you have, what Erik Erikson would call the industry versus inferiority phase, and that's when you begin to think about your social worth. And so no matter how healthy mom is, there are these external factors that affect your ability to cope and your ability to develop a strong identity. And again, so once we see children going into school age, it isn't so much what is contained in a family that can support a child, but it really is how the community is reacting to kind of this idea that a child's development is now tied to their social worth. And then even later in life, children become very preoccupied with how other children see them. And so when we think about, again, supporting children that are experiencing homelessness and understanding human development, we begin to see the need to look at how children are going to react to our services and how to best provide services based on where they are developmentally. I recently met with a bunch of middle school students who were experiencing homelessness and started to think about, you know, what it is that they needed and how it is that they wanted it. And it was overwhelming to me that even though they needed uniforms for school and they needed transportation for school, they were so afraid of another child finding out that they were homeless that they went to great lengths to hide their bus pass, great lengths to hide. I mean, a child talked to me about how he would roll up his uniform and tuck it away so that no one would see that he got the uniform from school. And so again, kind of understanding where children are in their development, what's important to children, helps us organize in a way that service delivery could be provided and keep kind of their identity and their sense of dignity intact. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about kind of this idea of how we support children experiencing homelessness. And again, going back to the fact that we don't have the ability just to provide housing for everyone. That's a greater social issue. And I provided for you today a summary of the report card. I don't know if anybody saw that on CNN. There is a national report card on how we're doing in terms of child homelessness. And I will share with you, and I don't think you'll be surprised, that California rated 40th out of 50 states. Texas was 50 though, because everything is bigger in Texas. But it gives you a lot of information in terms of how the state is doing as it relates to child homelessness. And with our economic crisis, we know that the idea of just alleviating homelessness by providing a place for children to live, by providing a place for families to live isn't enough. So we need to look at what it is that we can do that doesn't cost money, but that can have immediate response. And somebody asked me once, what business are you in? And I said, we're in the business of resiliency. Because I really believe that that is the business that we are in. And so when we talk to our staff and when we begin to talk about what our role is, we want to identify what it is that makes a child resilient. And there have been 4 different factors that have been identified that kind of are the characteristics of children that are resilient. And knowing this, it allows us to plan our program around helping children get to these areas, to kind of master these areas, if you will. And some children already come resilient. I mean, they just are. Their makeup is that of children who can engage and interact and make friends and really see themselves as competent with a future. And then there are other children who don't have that. So it is our role to facilitate that for them. So kind of the characteristics of a child that's resilient is a child that has social competence. And these are children that are flexible and empathetic and responsive and caring and can make friends easily. And so when we identify a child who doesn't have that social competence, we create curriculum, we create opportunities for friendships, we create partnerships that will foster that and facilitate that. The second is a child's ability to solve problems, to think critically. And so again, when we think about our programming, and because we're in the business of resiliency, is creating opportunities for children to solve problems. The staff does not go in and do the problem solving for them. The staff simply facilitates, and children get to see the influence of their power when problems are resolved. The third is autonomy. Children who have a strong sense of self, a positive self-image. Again, because we know that this is part of what contributes to a child's ability to be resilient, we created lots of opportunities for children to practice autonomy. And the last piece is having a sense of purpose, knowing that there is a future. I recently spoke to some of the staff at Bethune, and it was so amazing to me how every single staff person talked about how they wanted to drive the message home that you can do anything, that you can be what you want, and just kind of that undying belief, unwavering belief that children will have a bright future, and that they are, one of the teachers said, they're not students, they're scholars. And I make sure that at the end of the day, they know that nothing can get in their way and that I believe in them. And so oftentimes, again, some children come with this. They just have the temperament that says to us that child is going to be resilient. And for those that don't, it is our role, if it doesn't come from within, as family, to make them believe that we believe, to hold them to standards, regardless of their circumstances, that will help them have a plan for themselves. And certainly as community, we need to communicate to children that this is just a moment in time, but that their capacity to have influence in their future is great. So I leave you with one last story, and that is a child. Children Today does obviously a lot of fundraisers because we're a nonprofit, and recently we partnered with Cal State Long Beach and their events planning communication department. And part of their work was to put on a fundraiser to benefit Children Today. I mean, it's cheap labor, it's great, it's the way to go, friends. So they part of their orientation was that the students had to come out to the facility, meet with me, interview me, take a tour of the program before they began going out to the community and asking for support and putting together whatever event that they were going to put. And so I walked a group of students through the facility and answered their questions, and they were wonderful questions, in-depth questions about philosophy and the greater issue in Long Beach around homelessness. And towards the end of the tour, most of the students left, but one girl stayed behind, and she walked with me out into the parking lot, and I walked her to the car, and we were just kind of chit-chatting. She had further questions, and when we got to the car, she turned around and she hugged me. And it was one of these bear hugs, and it was a really long hug. And when she pulled away, she said, "I want you to know that I was homeless as a child. And if I had this, I would never want to leave. I'd never want to leave here." And so it just, again, communicated to me the importance of giving children a place where they can build up these strengths in order to be resilient, in order to combat what's happening out there. And you know, a lot of people say to me, I don't know how parents can put children through this. And my response is always, I can't believe we failed them when they were little. And now we're here supporting their children because we didn't respond quick enough when they were children. So I thank you for your time.
The children are remarkably resilient, but the highly mobile life, living in crowded and noisy shelters, camping, moving from motel to motel, presents them with extraordinary challenges and too often denies them the opportunity to be a child and grow healthy and secure. For these children, education is not only their hope for the future, but critical to their day-to-day existence. School can provide stability, security, caring adults, and the tools and resources to survive, as well as a safe place to grow and learn. But going to school isn't always easy.
We have to get up, take my sister, both my sisters, to school, and they go to 2 different schools. And then we have to go pick up my brother, and he goes to my school, so that's a little bit better. And then when we go to school, I have to like, I don't eat, so I'm like kind of hungry, and it kind of starts my day kind of rough. I didn't have any A's or B's. I had like C's, D's, and like an F, because like moving to there was hard because I couldn't do my work because of, you know, our homework from people there could help us, but they understand some of it. And then it was noisy, so it was kind of hard to concentrate. And then we had something to do, like be in at a time, and then like be in bed at a certain time, and things like that.
But it's actually kind of hard because you're kind of scared when you move, but you're kind of excited at the same time because you lose some of your friends and you make more friends.
Yeah, but it's kind of hard to make more friends.
I've only got a couple friends that move.
So Alvin, wait no, Alvin at Libby School, and then Alvin, and then Giles, and now we're going to move.
4 different schools. Yeah, 4. My sister, she would like look over us in the bus stop. She would drop us off and wait till the bus came. And then my sister, my big sister, the one that drives, she's in college. She does she goes to school Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And she would leave us there, and sometimes when she would be late to school, she would just drop us off there and wait till the bus came and drop my mom off there. And my mom went wherever.
We made friends, and then we went to a different school. We made friends, moved to a different school. We made friends, moved to a different school, and now we stayed at Oakley.
It's hard because you like make friends, a lot of friends, and then when you like move to different schools, you're gonna tell them bye or something, and then you don't get their number, and like it could hurt them because like they think that you're mad at them.
It's too noisy when you eat. I couldn't even do my homework at the table because sometimes I do it in my room and it's too noisy.
Actually, it was because there's a lot of kids there, and I was struggling to do my homework.
School, I've already missed like 8 weeks and 6 days of school, but it would have been 9 weeks, but I went to 1 day in school up in Portland. So what happened was, after that, we just moved right out. I didn't even get to go say goodbye to any of my friends. They were really stink, because I had a lot of friends that I was depending on going and seeing and playing with for another day. Well, usually we make like these little pit stops so I can do my homework.
So I stayed there, trying to figure out what school to go in. It was kind of hard to say, okay, I'm going to get into this school, and then my birth certificate I didn't have. I had to like get a temporary one. Let's see. I went to Monroe, went to McKinley, I went to Plantation, Fairview, Greenfield, Deanza, Santa Barbara, and then now Santa Barbara.
Going to second grade. Fourth grade. Second. Seventh.
High school.
Second. Kindergarten. Second. First and fourth, but I was too small for kinder, so I'm supposed to be going to fifth, but I'm going to fourth grade.
Children and youth without a home often have wishes and dreams that are not at all like those of their house peers. They take on the burden of the adults in their lives as a priority.
It's sort of like a game of chess. And you make one, if you slip up one piece, then you're gonna lose that piece. And it really stinks when you lose your pieces, because that narrows it down to your last pieces, and it's gonna be hard to live. You gotta make your moves wisely, and you gotta play them good.
Anything helps me as long as when I have kids, I can support them. As long as I wouldn't like them to be homeless like we were, but as long as they have shelter over their head and food and clothes, I will take care of my kids more than me.
I wish everybody would quit fighting. Even when you say, hey, it's like somebody who's living, wish that can quit. If I had a wish, I would pick to get a house early, because they don't let you play outside. If you play and they go talk with your parents and they put more money they need to pay.
Probably wish for a scholarship to go to college, because I know it's going to be hard to do that.
Be rich so my mom won't be poor, because we don't have lots of money right now. I had a wish. It was for the house. We can have a house. That was my wish. We would live in the house and we would go to the same school. Keep on going there until we have to go to high school, then college, then we get married. A house and a car and clothes and things for my parents.
Above all, being homeless is not being hopeless as the children envision a future for themselves.
What I want to be when I grow up as a policeman. When I grow up, I want to be a book writer to study dolphins. I want to be a doctor, a nurse, a girl nurse, because they have dresses on. A vet. When I grow up, I want to be a doctor. Policeman.
Yeah, I want to go to college to be a doctor, pediatrician.
I'm not really sure because I want to be all kinds of things.
Children, our greatest national treasure and resource, cannot achieve their wishes and goals without support. The responsibility for their future lies with all of us. Life has not given them an easy road, but just one caring adult, one simple act can make a difference in the life of a child.
The first time I was homeless was, well, I was probably about 6. My mom was not able to get a house because of all the evictions that are on your record. But no matter what happens, we always got each other. Because there's a lot of homeless kids in this world that need education, or else it's going to be hard for them to survive in their life.
Good morning. I am LeAnn Mora. I am one of the district social workers who works with students experiencing homelessness. And Tory and I are here today to talk to you about how the school district provides services to these students. So I will start with the McKinney-Vento Assistance Act. And you all have a handout in front of you to follow along if it's difficult to see the screen. So the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act is the act that ensures educational rights and protections for children and youth experiencing homelessness. This act promotes school stability and continuity, access to school classes and programs, academic success, and child-centered best interest decision-making. The definition of homelessness, according to this act, is students who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. As you've heard in the video, some of the kids talked about where they live. And a lot of them talked about different shelters, living in maybe abandoned buildings, substandard living conditions, maybe an old trailer. A lot of families in Long Beach Unified are doubled up, and they're doubled up due to economic hardship. And sometimes that can be a gray area because a lot of our families are doubled up due to cultural reasons, or just to live a little bit easier day to day. You know, they can make it on their own, but why not share a place with a friend just to make things a little bit easier, you know, on a daily basis for, you know, economic reasons. So that we would not consider homelessness. We have families living in cars. We have families living in tents. You know, so it's very important that Tory and myself and other district social workers talk to everybody in our school district. When I say everybody, I mean like teachers, administrators, counselors, people that the families meet right away when they come into the school office to enroll their children. It's very important that they know about this act, because if children are in school, they're not homeless for 6 or 7 hours a day. And that's what we want. So we do have a slide on statistics. And the stats are, in the 07-08 school year, we identified 1,051 students. A high-end estimate is more like 4,400. So we haven't identified near what we're thinking that we have in our district. Because in a district with 88,000 students, it's hard to believe only 1,000 of them are in this situation. And then it's broken down, the 1,051, into how many are in shelters, doubled up, unsheltered, and motels and hotels. The national homeless ed stats are 20% of students who are homeless do not even attend school. And within a school year, a child experiencing homelessness, 41% attend 2 different schools, and 28% attends 3 or more schools. And we want those stats to continue to go down because we want these kids in school every day. We have a board policy in place, and the Long Beach Unified School District recognizes its obligation to ensure that homeless children have access to the same free and appropriate public education provided to other children within the district. Meaning that we are not going to segregate these kids, and we're not going to deny them access to the same education that all students have access to in our district. Immediate enrollment is a huge part of our policy. Now, when I presented to school staff, especially office people, I get a lot of hands up in the air. What? We have to immediately enroll these kids without immunization records? We have to enroll them even though we don't even know the person that's enrolling them, if that's their parent or not? And I always say yes, because why not? They want their kids in school. They want these kids in school, so why not enroll them? You know, what would be the hang up in that? And I always stress to the fact that the staff at Bethune, including myself, will help gather all of those records, birth certificates, immunization records, make sure the families know what community resources are available to get these things, to build that new cumulative file. So I always am flabbergasted by how surprised people are at the immediate enrollment piece. And I always say, you know, if these kids, you know, are in school, again, they're getting 2 meals a day, free. They're getting an education, you know, they're safe, and they're not, like Dora said, you know, these kids are listening to their stories, the parents' stories, over and over again all day long. Why would we want the kids listening to those stories all day when they could be in school getting an education? So we always stress the immediate enrollment piece, that it's very important that they enroll right away, no questions asked. Once the parent discloses that they're in transition, some parents will say, yes, I'm homeless, I'm moving around, then that's when we go ahead and we just enroll and we start providing access to community resources. Tory.
Pick up a little piece here. LeAnn is our school district social worker who works at Bethune and really facilitates children who are in homeless shelters, making sure that they get to schools and that the loss of instructional time is as small as possible. But as district social workers, we work on behalf of all 93 schools that are out there. So we only have 11 school social workers right now, so we're divided up amongst a large number of schools. So I work for 11 different elementary schools, and it's really incumbent upon us to make sure that there's a pipeline of information flowing from the cases that we receive at those school sites directly to LeAnn out of Bethune, so that they can activate all the services that the McKinney-Vento Homeless Act can bring about to help these students. And so it's important for us to make sure, and this is actually something about 3 years ago, LeAnn let us know, please, every case, tell us. And we're like, okay, great, because they're really very complicated cases that take a lot of effort. And so letting her know is the way that we've added some numbers to the amount of homeless children that are identified in the district. Now, homelessness has a stigma attached to it, so parents oftentimes won't identify as being homeless. I'll go over a few tips later on what schools can do. Transportation is a big key. Sometimes when we let parents know that there's transportation for the child to go to their home school, even if they end up going to a shelter, that can make a big difference for them saying, yes, we do need some assistance. So it's always a very sensitive way of approaching a family to make sure that they don't get the feeling that you're trying to label them as homeless so you can take away their services, or that you can belittle them, but that you can say, are you in a transition experience? If so, let us provide you some support. Fortunately, what happens is whenever we're out in the district and we meet a family who's been homeless and they have been to Bethune, they speak about LeAnn and Rhonda and Maribel, who are the 3 primary workers that are out there. They speak about them in such glowing terms that the work that they have done has just elevated the status of social workers and of the work that can be provided for families who are homeless. And so they're like, oh, you know LeAnn? Oh, cool. And then they'll just start talking to us about what's going on. And that's just such a key component to make sure that these families continue to receive services so there's not trust issues that occur out there. Transportation, big key. We talked to James Suarez, who is our homeless liaison for the district. Now, there are only 3% of districts in the nation who qualify for assistance through the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. And obviously that's federal funding coming in, so there's a lot of money attached to that, so they can't go to all the districts. But only 3%, that's a lot. 97% of districts don't receive this funding. So our Bethune Transitional Center is really comes about as a result of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. And so transportation is provided through our homeless liaison, James Suarez, who works out of our main office at Hughes Way. And what we do is we can notify him, or we can talk to LeAnn and she can notify them. And it takes about 3 or 4 days usually to set up transportation. And this is not the yellow bus transportation that you might see with special ed. This is transportation that's city buses. And so they will get either Long Beach transit passes if they are living in Long Beach and are going to return to their same school, or they will get an easy transit pass, which allows them to do MTA, Long Beach Transit, Red Line, Blue Line. So they were able to kind of cover all the needs. So say they're in Paramount, or say they move to Bellflower, and it's deemed it's in the best interest of the child to return to the school. And here's an example. Let's say you have a child who is a senior and has 3 months to go. And they've been going to Long Beach schools. or even if they've been going to high school for 3.5 years, that's enough, but they've been going to Long Beach school their whole life. They become homeless and they move up to Pasadena, real story, and they move up to Pasadena. What do? The law says if it's in the best interest of the child, you facilitate them continuing to go to their home school. So we did that. So now the child would come down, and if there was a problem, if they could not make it, if they show up halfway through the day, then we have to relook at it. The child was there on time every day and graduated with the rest of their class. So this is an example of what could have been a loss of instructional time being eliminated and continued service allowed for this child. Because when you're homeless, you miss so much. I mean, Dora's talked about a lot, LeAnn has talked about. Okay, so transportation is key. Now, Ralph sells that Easy Transit Pass the 25th or 26th of each month, so that's just a little thing you guys to know. All right. Okay, barriers to education. These are not surprising to you guys as you look at these. I'm going to kind of take these terms here and add something to them. So I'd like you to look at the first one, delayed enrollment. What are we concerned about? The loss of instructional time. Okay, the loss of time in the classroom learning. High numbers of school transfers. What are we concerned about? Loss of attachment. You heard the children talk about saying goodbye to a friend, saying hello to new friends, all the loss of attachment. What are they thinking about when they see their parent being belittled in front of them? What does that mean for how proud they are of their circumstances? Lack of school supplies and clothing. We're talking about loss of resources. Poor health, fatigue, and hunger. Loss of physiological safety. Do we hear our Maslow bells going off in people's heads now? Okay. Prejudice and understanding. Loss of respect, self-worth, and I'll use the term that Dora used, social worth. So these are all issues that have mental health implications for children. So there's a lot of our providers here who provide mental health services to children. I think it's important to realize that these things that they face have a mental health component to them. We have a lot of handouts. And so there's a few handouts in the back that say tips for working with families, just a few. And if there's people who want more interest in these tips, we can provide you copies of these. But we provide these to schools. LeAnn really provides these to schools, and that's to make sure that schools are sensitive in how they go about working with families. Try to avoid the use of the word homeless. Families in transition is a better way to address families that teaches them, talks about respect, respects their situation. Try to use their native language. Speak to them in the language that they're most comfortable with. Fortunately, in the school district, we have site-based staff that can speak a number of languages. There are some that can't speak, but we do have the PALMS office, which is our program assistance for language minority students. And in that PALMS office, we have translators, interpreters that speak all languages in Long Beach, and so we're able to bring people out if we need to in certain situations. And then we want to make sure that the parents get connected to somebody on site, that when they come in, there's somebody they can go to. Because parents themselves have often had very negative experiences with schools. They're afraid to go on campus in their clothing, with their children looking the way they're looking, and have people judge them. And schools can be a very judgmental place. Think back to middle school. Okay? Schools can be a very judgmental place from the adults as well. Okay? And so what we're trying to do is say, let's make a connection that you know when you walk in, you can walk past everybody and just go right to this person. And this person will provide support for you. And then you know how sometimes you go to a party, you don't think you know anybody? And you see one person, you kind of head towards that person, and you're like, I know that person. Okay, so we're trying to create that kind of familiarity with parents, that they know there's someone they can go to, and that person will say, welcome, come on in. I'm not too busy for you right now. So we preach this to the schools, try to make sure that they don't get hung up on the fact that they don't have a utility bill to enroll. I don't have a utility bill. Sorry, you can't enroll. Well, as LeAnn said, no, that's no longer the case. We're trying to build up advocacy so that schools will know, that secretaries, that office personnel will know that they will enroll at any point. And so we want teachers to be aware, and I'm going to use something that Dora said earlier, and I was kind of glad she didn't say it earlier, but she said it when we met earlier this week. She said kids need somebody to be crazy about them. And homeless kids need that. And you think about, do you have a chance to sort of brush up against a homeless child? Can you be crazy about that kid? You know, we talk about one caring adult. You know, we're all familiar with that. A child who gets one caring adult can make a difference in their life. And we'll take that caring adult and let's just multiply it by 10 and say, no, you need to be crazy about this kid. And when I left that conversation last week, I was like, man, I want to be crazy about my daughter. I want to be crazy about the kids that I'm working with at school. And how cool would that be for a kid to think, man, that guy, he really cares about me. You know, they really care about me. And what might that do for a child and their sense of attachment and their losses of attachment. So I want to encourage you to move in that direction. Let's go on to recommended services. Okay, so what we ask schools to do is to consider setting up counseling services for children. Now, we're not going to just make the assumption, but we want it to be there. Now, we have a program in the district called School-Based Mental Health Services. Basically, it's a contract with the Department of Mental Health where agencies, some agencies that may be here, Guidance Center, Harborview, Helpline, some of these agencies come on campus and work with students. And many times, these families have Medi-Cal, and that's the funding sources through Medi-Cal. So we encourage schools to do that. Adopt a family during holiday times. Holiday times are very difficult. Children don't have the resources, don't have gifts, don't have things that other children do. They can't really connect on that level. And teachers, by the way, spend a lot of their own money. I just want to let you guys know that. And I know we hear a lot about public education. You probably want to hear the bad things. Teachers spend an inordinate amount of their money to make sure that these children have shoes, have places to stay. There was a mother who was staying in the Colonial Motel. I don't know if you guys know where it is. It's on PCH over by Poly and Poly High School. And this mom was not afraid to come in and ask when she needed money. So we tried to work with her on maybe to come with another plan, but she was scraping by, scraping by. A teacher ended up spending her own money to pay for a couple nights in the motel for this mom before she could end up getting to her next check coming in. So I just want you guys to know that teachers out there are working, and administrators are very compassionate about the needs of these children. So just to give you a little different flavor on the work of the public schools. And then McKinney-Vento writes, we want to make sure that they know that they cannot be exited from the school because they don't have a permanent residence. And so those have been sticking points in the past, and so we're really working hard to make sure that's overcome. Okay, I'm going to hand it back to LeAnn.
Okay, so as I said earlier, I work for Bethune Transitional Center. It is a program here in the district that provides services to students experiencing homelessness across the entire district. We do have 2 classrooms on site. We have kindergarten through 8th. We have kinder and first in one classroom, 2nd through 8th in the other classroom. We have usually about 20 kids on campus. When I started at Bethune about 7 years ago, we had about 55 kids on campus. But because of McKinney-Vento, kids are staying at the school where they have been attending. Their school of origin is what we call it. So that's a wonderful thing. So I do a lot more outreach throughout the district as opposed to just providing services at Bethune, which is what it was when I first started. So Bethune is basically, it's well known in the community as the program that provides services to students experiencing homelessness. So we get a lot of wonderful donations, especially at holidays. We get a lot of gift cards for Payless Shoe Source. We get grocery gift cards. We get Target gift cards. So whenever we go out and we talk to the school sites and talk to the different administrators throughout the district, we let them know that because Bethune is so connected to the community, that we do have these extra things for the families. Sometimes we even get little groups throughout the community that make blankets. They go out and buy a bunch of pillows for us, so all the kids get pillows and blankets, especially at Christmas when it's really cold out. And for some reason in March it's cold in California, but let's enjoy it while it lasts, right? Because it's going to be hot pretty soon. So basically Bethune is a short-term school. The kids who attend Bethune, those 20 kids I mentioned earlier, they are going to transition back out except for the kindergarten class. We do keep them all year because kindergarten is not mandated by the state, so it's not considered segregation, so we keep those kids all year, as long as the parents want them at Bethune all year. They can move out of the shelters and move in with a family member, or even get their own place, and if they want to keep their kids at Bethune through the remainder of the year, we will keep them. So we basically service, I should get back to the thing because I'll get off topic. So basically our mission is to mainstream the students into a traditional school setting. Typically that's Hudson School, because Hudson is the home school for the villages, and we are located at the villages of Cabrillo. If you're all familiar with that area, it's the old naval housing way over on the west side behind Cabrillo High School. So our program is located within that community. It's a private community. There are 3 family shelters in there that we provide services to. And now we have a new building that's called the Path, the Family Commons Path. And it has about 81 units, and that's considered permanent housing, but we are providing services to those kids as well, because a lot of those kids are new to Long Beach Unified. A lot of them have come from LA Unified and Compton Unified. So we've been helping with that transition as well, which is really nice. What we do is we provide, when a student enrolls at Bethune, we give them 2 brand new uniforms, new backpack with school supplies, pair of tennis shoes, socks and underwear. We make sure that the family is hooked up with all the right resources in the community. And we also provide those same things to the students who are identified throughout the district. A lot of our schools have a tremendous amount of families experiencing homelessness. And so their resources get tapped out very quickly. And you know, as Tory mentioned earlier, there was there's the Operation School Bell, Rick Rackers through the Assistance League that provides, I don't even know, I think like 10,000 students a year with school uniforms. They help us as well as, you know, like I said, throughout the school district. And if they are unable to help or there's a long waiting list at a school site because they have so many kids in need, we will jump in and say, hey, we've got some school uniforms, let's take care of these kids. So we try and support all the schools in the district as much as possible with uniforms and shoes and things like that. The phone number to Bethune is on the slide, so if you have any further questions or if you want to come by and visit us anytime, we're more than welcome to have you come by and check out our program. We'll give you a little tour. It's like a 5-minute tour because the campus is very small, but it's a wonderful campus. We were in 2 really old bungalows that were falling apart. The floors were dipping down because there was no real stability underneath the foundation. And we had these tiny little closet-sized bathrooms, and Don Kanabi said, hey, you know, these kids need a real campus. They need some real bathrooms. So they donated him and his office donated $1 million to us about 2.5 years ago, and now we have 4 buildings. So we went from 2 to 4, and it's classrooms, restrooms, and then an admin building. So that's been very nice for our kids. And much bigger quad, as you would call it, the playground and the grassy area. They can play soccer now, and it's really wonderful. So typically we service kids who are new to Long Beach Unified. They're in a situation where they're in transition. Kids aren't enrolled anywhere, so we go ahead and enroll them with us, especially if the family is moving around a lot. We can create that stability for a little while till they get a little bit more stable in their home life, and then we transition them out to wherever their home school would be throughout the district. So sometimes they're staying in the 30-day shelter across the street. We keep them at Bethune for 30 days, and then when they move out, we figure out what traditional school setting would best fit them. We work a lot with the multi-service center, but quickly the other resources are listed. Oh, did I skip one? Did I skip one of the slides? Okay. So the other resources are listed there if you wanted to look up a little bit more about the California Department of Ed and the McKinney-Vento Act. And then the Multi-Service Center is an agency that I work a lot with because I refer every family that comes in the door to them, and I always make sure they have a caseworker at the Multi-Service Center, because I always say they are your best resource in the community to work towards getting permanent housing, as well as, you know, the preschool is over there, the playhouse, and a tremendous amount of support over there for these families. So with that being said, Elsa is going to come up and talk a little bit more about the
We truly are that. We are a partnership between the Department of Health and Human Services. That's who I work for. I am the Multi-Service Center Coordinator, and I oversee all the operations and the programs that are operated there in conjunction with all the 12 other nonprofit co-located agencies that run their own programs there as well. Dora mentioned that the Playhouse, I believe that's considered Playhouse West, is located at the Multi-Service Center, and they're servicing right now 32 children experiencing homelessness. I don't know if you got into the statistics about that, but there's 6 children that are infant, They serve, I believe, 8 toddlers and then 18 preschoolers. So we do have a lot of children accessing services there, in addition to the Playhouse North that also transitions children that are not necessarily homeless, but are transitioning from Playhouse West into a more stable daycare system prior to going into kindergarten. In addition to the Playhouse, we also have a clinic that is recently became full-time at the Multi-Service Center that provides immunizations for children to get into the daycare or the school district that requires immunizations, any type of physicals, and that's not limited to the children but also to the adults who have, needing any medical care, chronic diseases, essentially becoming their home place for medical care, which is a big barrier for a lot of the families who work with that are not able to sustain any stability in their home life. So a lot of the things that tend to go out the window are school, medical care, just the basic needs that we all kind of take for granted that we are able to access on a regular basis. These are basic needs that these people don't necessarily have. At the Multi-Service Center, we also provide employment readiness classes that is key for assisting these people to gain their own self-sustainability. And a lot of the time is that the biggest barrier for a lot of these individual adults or families to get back into permanent housing is that they don't have somewhere to leave their child to provide the daycare. So the child daycare on site definitely assists in assisting the family or the single parent with getting back into permanent housing, provides that barrier with being able to feel secure that their child is being cared for while they're going back to school or trying to access employment and receiving the services and support services to get an employment that's going to be ongoing, and assisting them with providing the primary care that they need to sustain their ongoing permanent housing. We also have financial literacy classes that are offered on site, comprehensive case management for families and individuals to assist them with the wraparound services that they need. A lot of our families come from a history of poverty, of homelessness, and what we try to do is kind of provide the wraparound services that they need to help them be successful in their permanent housing. Beyond Shelter is one of our programs, our agencies that provide wraparound services for families moving from shelter to permanent housing, and they will provide case management services up to 12 months after they've been permanently housed in order to ensure that these families are stable, they have all the resources that they have in their own community once they've been housed to ensure their success in permanent housing. We provide a lot of comprehensive services at the Multi-Service Center, which helps people become successful into getting into permanent housing. But we also want to ensure that once people are permanently housed, they have the supports within the larger community to sustain that housing. I cannot tell you how much harder it is to assist someone who's experiencing homelessness rather than providing the supports in place while they're currently housed to prevent them from being homeless. It's so much more easier to address those issues before they experience any type of homelessness. We are very lucky here in Long Beach to have the Multi-Service Center, the Villages at Cabrillo, which houses a lot of homeless service programs. PATH is the new, People Assisting the Homeless is the new agency on site at the Villages at Cabrillo that oversees the 80 units of permanent housing. We are really truly lucky to have these jewels within the city. However, with the level of people that we're seeing at the Multi-Service Center, it's just not enough to deal with the influx of people that we're seeing. Just to give you an idea, from 2007 to 2008, we have seen a 35% increase in homelessness at the Multi-Service Center. I've been with the Multi-Service Center for almost 2 years now, and when I first started, we were seeing about 50 families a month that were experiencing homelessness and first accessing the center, in addition to the families we were currently working with. As of last month, we are seeing an average of 105 to 120 families accessing the center for the first time. So it's a huge jump in homeless families. That's not to mention all the other singles that we are seeing. And there is no way that we can assist every single family that comes to the door. So we try to prioritize the families that are here in Long Beach to get them into shelter, to work out and become creative with whatever their living situation is at the time. If they're staying with family, if they're staying with friends, how we can be creative to provide them with the supports to get back into permanent housing. One of the great tools that we have at the Multi-Service Center is our Home Move-In Assistance Program, which provides first month's rent and a deposit for families. So if we do have families that are coming through the Multi-Service Center that for whatever reason are being evicted due to foreclosures that their landlords are having or having to move to a new location, we will provide that move-in assistance because a lot of families sometimes are able to sustain their housing but don't have those resources to move into another unit. So for us, we're trying to be as proactive as possible to keep people housed, because experiencing homelessness, it not only affects the parents, but it, as Dora was saying, the experience of a child at that developmental stage is so impactful and really does stay with that child and creates this huge trauma that we can all not really understand unless we were in those child's shoes. So I did pass out, make available to you a list of all the agencies that are co-located at the Multi-Service Center and the resources that they provide. I also passed out pocket guides. Please contact me. I can send out my outreach coordinator to provide you extra copies of the pocket guide. This is a great resource to have when you encounter anybody that is experiencing homelessness, to let them know that the Multi-Service Center does exist, the Villages at Cabrillo does exist, and the Mental Health America, the Village, also exists to provide any mental health services for people in need of those resources. So I hand it back over.